Missing episodes. Let's talk about it. Hey guys, welcome back to SkewbWho, and in today's video we're going to be discussing 3 Doctor Who missing episodes that I would like to be found. Obviously, if I don't have the choice, but if I had the choice of which ones I could be found, which ones I would choose. Now, a lot of my lore into Classic Who for quite a while was into the missing episodes, and I've always been into lost media, and it almost, I think, I'm not happy that the episodes are missing, but I think having the episodes missing gives some of the 60s stories a bit of a interesting, mysterious vibe, especially when you're watching some of the animations and some of the, particularly the orphan episodes as well. They get a really interesting vibe off them about almost like it, not that you shouldn't be seeing it, but it's rare. But these are 3 stories that if I had the choice of which ones I would like to see found, these are 3 I would choose. Okay, so this is quite an easy one, and this is one I think a lot of Doctor Who fans, and a lot of you guys probably will choose. We're going to go with the Power of the Daleks. Now, the Power of the Daleks is easily, for me, one of the best Dalek stories ever, one of the best second Doctor stories, and potentially one of the best Doctor Who stories ever. This thing is phenomenal when you think about what this needed to be for the monumental time in the show's history. This had to be phenomenal. Tron had to be phenomenal. Everything did, and it really does, in my opinion. I think the 2016 animation is a bit shaky. The 2020 animation, I think it was 2020, is a huge improvement. It makes a massive difference to the viewing experience. Now imagine that if it was actually found. It's just, I don't think it'd make it worse. I know there's some limitations, and there's a lot of clips found of the Power of the Daleks, such as the scene where they're all coming through the conveyor belt, and it is just 4 Daleks going around because they only had 4 models. And that scene, I can't remember what part it is, where there's just loads of Daleks all screaming, and that they've just produced loads of them. It is a load of cardboard cutouts. So in that case, and this is going to be the case with some stories, the animation is going to potentially add a lot more special effects and a lot better look to some of the monsters and some of the stories than if they were actually found and if we have the surviving footage. But just to see it, what it was, how monumental and revolutionary this was for TV, let alone Doctor Who, how Patrick Troughton, how he started it out. I know we have a few clips and but I'd love to see the whole thing and just see how Troughton was throughout this whole story, particularly episode 1. I think it's more so the Power of the Daleks episode 1 that I'd be more interested in. But again, just seeing this whole story come back, I think it is for me, it's one of Troughton's strongest stories. It's really, really phenomenal, and yeah, I don't know, I'd really love to see this one. I think just seeing the early days of Doctor Who and how regeneration would have been handled properly, not for animation, that'd be really cool. So I'm gonna go Power of the Daleks as my first choice on this list. My next 2, I'm not as certain on. There's a lot I could bring up. The Web of Fear episode 3. It's only 1 episode, but the Web of Fear is one of my favorite Trout ones, and I think that would make a huge difference to the story. Daleks Master Plan. If it's ever going to be animated, it's a huge job. So, I love the animations, and I think they're a very good way to experience the missing stories. But Daleks Master Plan as a job is huge, and then they got a Mission to Do Unknown as well, so that's 13 episodes. God knows if we're ever going to get that. And Fury from the Deep as well, I think, from an animation perspective, just with how visual Fury from the Deep is and how it kind of relies on that, that black and white, the way that the TV was made back then, it really utilizes that. I think that having that one found would make a huge upgrade on the animation as opposed to some of the other ones that have already been animated. But I'm gonna go with the Massacre. Now, the Massacre is, I think it's the most missing story. I know there's a few that don't have any footage, like Mission to the Unknown. Marco Polo doesn't have any footage either. But this is like proper lost, like very few screenshots. We have no idea what the Doctor actually looked like to play this Abbott. And that, for me, first and foremost, one of the reasons I like to see it is, we get to see this piece of Doctor Who history. We get to see how William Hartnell looked playing as the Abbot of Amboise, I think it's pronounced. Also, I listened to this on audio a couple of weeks ago. It's a pretty decent story. Hartnell's speech at the end is phenomenal, and it's one of those few times where Doctor Who takes a minute. Back in the day, back in the 60s, especially the Hartnell era, it is very much, they land somewhere, all the stuff happens, they run away to the TARDIS, they all take a sigh of relief, press the controls, and then they're back into it again. It's one of the few times where the Doctor Who, and especially the Doctor, just sits and just talks about what's happened in the show, and it makes it seem a little bit more like it keeps sometimes it doesn't feel like old Doctor Who doesn't really reference Doctor Who lore. I don't know if that makes sense, but this definitely does. And it's a very well acted speech as well. And yeah, I think from a raw content perspective, it would give us a hell of a lot more. And it's also just, it's a big story for Stephen. And I think a lot of Stephen's stories don't really, don't exist. Galaxy 4's only got one episode, and that's one that's, while I personally like Galaxy 4, I know a lot of people don't like it, and I know Peter Purvis, I believe, had some issue with that story as well. Master Plan, that's mostly missing. Celestial Toymaker mostly missing. Myth Maker's completely missing this. So I feel like a lot of the appreciation you get for Stephen, especially in a story like this that's so Stephen focused, that would help with that as well, and kind of help his status as a companion, I think, within the Doctor Who fandom. But I've gone for the Massacre. It's always intrigued me with how lost it actually is, and I would also like to see how, when they play out the Massacre, how it would have looked on screen. I know there's that shot of the camera, like the camera against canvas or whatever, and that had the thing on it. I'd love to see how it actually looked on screen and how they portrayed, because it sounds really brutal, it sounds really strong on audio, but I'd love to see how the visuals for that. I think there's a lot of intrigue around this one for me. I think the Power of the Daleks is the excitement of seeing how Doctor Who would have, how it actually survived, because obviously if the Power of the Daleks flopped, it was a game over, innit? But the Massacre, I'd just love to see all these new little bits that we haven't seen before. So that's going to be my second choice on this list. Now for the last one, because I only want to limit myself to 3 or else I'll be here all day. There's a lot of partially missing stories that I really like, that having it found would only make it better, like maybe the Ice Warriors or the Moon Base, but that's not something that, we have animations for those, and very, very good animations at that. So I'm going to go with Marco Polo on this one. Now, Marco Polo, as I've mentioned in my season 1 review, when I listened to it on audio, it's phenomenal. It's really, really good. It's just that lack of visuals makes a huge difference, especially for rewatchability or re-listenability or whatever. It's so much easier to rewatch something. And I think when you're first watching a Doctor Who story, sometimes you have to sit aside and focus, but it's not. If you want to rewatch, it doesn't have to be your prime focus. Maybe you're doing something else, or maybe you can be a little bit, you can just kind of watch it quite casually. But Marco Polo, you're never going to have that because it's on audio. Now, granted, you can still do other things and, listen to it in the background. I feel like it does take away from the rewatchability of the story that there's no visuals for it. And it is a long one as well. It's 7 parts. But there's so much going on here. And again, it's such an early part in Doctor Who's history, and it's a significant one as well. It's the first major historical written by John Lucarotti. And it is a really, really good story. And I think a lot of people know it's good. And a lot of people definitely potentially won't have checked it out though, because of the limitation of the screen. And I think this could potentially be considered one of the best 60 stories ever, just because of how phenomenal this story is. I think it's got a lot of potential. And like I said in my review of season 1, I think you could potentially put it as like a 9 out of 10. It is like really, really, really good. And I think it would just make it so much better to have those visuals there. And again, it's another case of we have no footage of it, so it's just more content of Doctor Who that would have been lost, or if we were able to retrieve it, we'd have just a bigger library of Doctor Who content, and any seconds and any frames we can get, it's something, and it's always progress. So I'm going to go with Marco Polo on that. Okay, but those are my picks for 3 missing Doctor Who stories that I'd love to see returned. Please let me know which 3 would you like to see returned, and what are your thoughts on my choices. I think the Power of the Daleks is definitely the one I feel this most strongly about. I think just being able to see that, even the vibe from the animation is very good. I think just being able to see that visually would be super, super cool. And it is also one of my favorite, Second Doctor stories. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below of my actual picks. Let me know what you thought of the video, and give me some suggestions for future videos. Let me know what you guys want to see. Well, until next time.